YouTube, what's up? As you guys know, if you're following my channel, you know I like collecting stuff, especially clothes, shoes. I like collecting cars, guitars. I'm just kind of like a collector slash hoarder in general. But recently, I got into a very, very dangerous game called watches. I've been just like consuming all types of watch content, learning as much as I can about watches, and I've become absolutely obsessed with it. Just did my Omega Speedmaster unboxing, which I'm wearing right now. As I continue to learn more and more about watches, I realize there's more and more watches that I want in my collection. By no means am I a watch expert, and I don't claim to be one. However, I think it's fair to evaluate myself as a watch snob. I define myself as a watch snob because I have a pretty good collection of watches, and I look down on my own collection. I know I've got a ways more to go to actually like really satiate everything that I want in my collection. Right now I think I got a bunch of basic stuff, but if people were to look at my collection, I think they would admire it. I'm not embarrassed about my collection or anything, but there are more things that I need in it to like feel fulfilled, at least in terms of watch collecting. I don't have a Seiko watch. I really want a Seiko spring drive movement watch in my collection. So it's not just based on price, but an overall like overview of everything. It's not quite where I want it to be. And so that's why I consider myself to be a watch snob. Now, I really hope like you guys find a lot of like value in this video, because we're going to talk about a watch that I purchased from my wife, but not just the watch itself, but how I got it. So right now it's really hard, especially if you're like watches that people are trying to collect that are limited or highly sought after. It's really hard to just walk into a store and buy it. It's not just Rolex, it's all kinds of watches. I ended up having to buy this watch on the gray market, and I bought it through a website, an app. It's known as Bezel. Until I started collecting watches, I had no idea what it was. It's a lot like similar to StockX, but it's for watches. That's the best way I can describe it. Once I purchased it, the seller sends it to Bezel, they authenticate it, and then I get it, I think they overnight shipped it to me. So the transaction happens and I receive my watch relatively quickly. They do an excellent job of packaging it too, so that the watch doesn't arrive damaged or anything like that. So major kudos to Bezel for that. Also, if you're looking for a watch, it's just a great like marketplace to look for specific watches. However, I'll say it's somewhat limited if your spectrum of watch collecting ranges from inexpensive to very, very expensive. But I would say the most kind of like basic popular watches you'll be able to find on the website. On Bezel, there's a listing price, and what's great is that you can negotiate and you can submit a counter offer and try to get a lower price. So that's obviously a good thing. What I don't like is I negotiate for a living. So when you negotiate, I think when you just throw numbers back and forth, it's harder to close a deal. I wish there was an option to send a message kind of giving the reasoning as to why you're offering a lower price, or build a rapport with the seller, and perhaps you can find a happy medium by just getting to know each other. Very impersonal, so you're not going to be able to negotiate much. And I'm sure Bezel takes a fee, so the seller is, the margins are already thin, and I assume once Bezel takes their percentage, it's even thinner. Not much negotiating done, at least for this specific watch that I bought from them. But overall, I had a really good experience with Bezel. So if you're looking for a watch, you're not trying to negotiate too much, I think it's a great place to buy. Now, if you're looking for something like super exclusive, rare, very, very expensive, I don't know if I could trust it, because when you buy a watch on the gray market, you're not really just buying the watch itself, you're buying the dealer, you're buying the seller. You want to trust who you're buying it from, so when you receive the watch, that you feel confident that you bought what was being offered, because it's crazy out there in the watch world. Alright, so the watch that I bought, it's known as it's made by the watchmaker Girard PERREGAUX. Don't kill me in the comments for the pronunciation. It's difficult to pronounce, but it is a Swiss company. It was founded in 1791, and so there's a lot of heritage there. People like Kobe Bryant, Jack Nicholson, Quentin Tarantino, they appreciate the brand and wear watches made by this company. 2022, last year, they had like a management buyout because it was once owned by Kering, and Kering owns like Balenciaga, all these other fashion brands, high-end fashion brands. When they managed the buyout in 2022, they decided that they were going to re-release one of their most famous models, known as the Casquette. It's a really, really dope watch. So this watch came out in like 1976 and like ran through the 80s. Only 8,200 of these models were ever made. You can still find the vintage ones. I was kind of tempted to buy a vintage one. The quartz movement has improved now, and it's kind of beat up. Most of the vintage watches are beat up. People didn't really care for them too much. So I wanted something cleaner for my wife in terms of like, as a watch. So I went with the re-release. It's limited edition. There's only 820 made. Updated quartz movement, as I mentioned. It's very basic, but it's just like, as you can see just from the way it looks, it's totally unique. It has its own design. I would say it's innovative, it's disruptive for back in 1976, and it still holds true to this day. It's kind of funny. I feel like it's what the 70s thought the future would be like, and it's really not like that now. And so to see it being released in 2022, the design it's kind of like a retro future look in a way. Kind of reminds me of an alarm clock. But that's the watch that I got from Bezel, and I'm gonna do the unboxing right now. Bing. That is fucking dope. Appreciate them wrapping this up in this like film protector. It's hard to see in the daylight. Not the most practical watch. It only tells you the time if you press this button, and it only displays for like 2 seconds. It's supposed to be a driver's watch apparently. Like the design is like, I guess when you're driving your car, you can just look at the side of your wrist maybe, but it kind of doesn't make any sense because in order to tell the time you have to press the button, so that's a bit inconvenient. It tells you the month. There's a chronograph as well, depending on how you press these buttons, but I can already tell it's gonna be annoying because there's only 2 buttons here, so you gotta press these buttons to get to like the calendar, the chrono, the time, the stopwatch, and all of that. Not the most practical watch, but from a design standpoint, I like it. And when I look at watches, I think of 3 things. I have design, function, and the precision of the watch. And from my understanding, as quartz movement, this is one of the most precise watches that exist. But I would say in terms of like function and utility, it's on the lower end because it only tells you the time if you press it. You only get 2 seconds to look at the time. So if you don't catch the time in 2 seconds, then you gotta press it again.
Thank you. What is it? What? This is awesome.
What's that?
Look.
Oh, your watch surprise!
Wow.
No.
It's a Casquette. Thank you.
It's not the YSL one.
That's okay. You can't even tell the YSL is YSL. Ooh. It's a really cool watch. This was actually a watch from the past, right?
Yeah, from the 70s.
Wow.
There's only 8,200 ever made. And then, so I guess they made 820 of the re-release.
Very
and 100
cool.
of the YSL.
Girard, PERREGAUX. Should I say that right? So sci-fi.